Kessa had never known her spine could scream like this. Not the sharp scream of injury, the low, grinding scream of muscle that had been asked to do something it was never built for, over and over, for 11 days straight. She was a virile, one of the sleek, aquatic, descended people from the ocean world of Austral, and her people's bones were built for buoyancy, not for standing at attention on Earth's crushing, unforgiving gravity, while a human instructor screamed about posture. She had thought, when the recruitment officer first came to Austral with promises of alliance and glory, that human training would mean impressive weapons, sleek starfighters, maybe a tour of some grand orbital shipyard. She had not expected mud. She had not expected a human woman, named Sergeant Okafor, banging a literal metal pipe against a literal metal railing at 4 in the morning, bellowing something about duty sleep being over. She rolled off her bunk, joints aching, and looked across the barracks at the rest of her squad. Duth was already up. He always was. A krill, broad and insectal chitin-plated in deep violet, mandibles clicking with something like amusement at Kessa's misery. The krill didn't sleep the way most species did. They simply powered down for short bursts, and Duth had apparently decided humans were fascinating enough to stay half awake for. "You make us sound like a dying compressor," Duth said, not unkindly, his translator box giving his voice a flat, buzzing cadence. "I am a dying compressor," Kessa muttered, dragging herself upright. Beside him, curled into a tight ball of gray fur and folded ears, was Pell, a Tavaxi, small and quick, built for scavenging and speed, rather than any kind of endurance. Pell's whole species had a well-earned reputation among the Alliance for being cowardly, clever, and absolutely terrible at anything resembling a fight. Pell had joined for reasons nobody quite understood, least of all Pell. "Is it Friday?" Pell asked, voice muffled by the blanket still over its head. "It's Friday," Kessa confirmed. Pell made a small, strangled noise. Fridays meant the special lessons. Fridays meant something new, and so far always something worse than expected. They were marched out before dawn, as always. No vehicles, because apparently recruits hadn't earned transport yet, a phrase that made Duth's mandibles click in what Kessa now recognized as barely restrained irritation. The krill were a proud warrior caste species, and being told they hadn't earned the right to ride in a truck offended something deep in Duth's cultural programming. They crested a low hill above the training yard, and Kessa saw it, a low concrete building, squat and gray, flanked by a line of parked vehicles. 10 of those vehicles bore the markings of what the humans called range safety, and every alien recruit on the hill went quiet at the sight of them. "They only bring the safety officers," Duth said slowly, "when somebody is going to be shot." Kessa's stomach dropped somewhere near her ankles. Sergeant Okafor was already waiting when they filed into the yard, arms crossed, a mug of something steaming in one hand. Beside her stood a broader man with a scar bisecting one eyebrow, introduced only as Drill Sergeant Vance. "Morning, maggots," Okafor said, far too cheerful for the hour. "Today's lesson is confidence." "I do not feel confident," Pell whispered. "I feel confident. This is a euphemism," Duth replied. "I feel confident I'm going to throw up," Kessa said, and meant it. They were marched into the squat gray building, and Kessa's first thought was that it looked exactly like every other armory she'd seen since arriving on Earth. Racks of matte olive armor, helmets lined up like a row of blank faces, technicians moving between them with checklists. Her second thought a moment later was that something was missing. She raised a hand. Okafor nodded at her. "Where do the suits plug in?" Kessa asked. "For the field generator." Okafor blinked. "Come again?" "The energy shield," Kessa clarified. "The deflector array." "I don't see a power core interface anywhere on the chest plate." There was a pause. Vance let out a short laugh that he tried and failed to smother into a cough. "There isn't one," Okafor said. "These are plate and weave. Physical armor. No generator, no field, no shield." The room went very still. Kessa heard Pell's breath catch somewhere behind her. "Then what?" said a Hitrian recruit near the front, tall. "Reed thin, feathered along the jaw. Stops the weapon fire from hitting us?" "The armor," Vance said, as though this were self-evident. "That's what armor's for. You just," Kessa started, then stopped, then started again. "You just take it? The impact? With nothing to disperse the energy?" "Yep," Okafor said, popping the P with what Kessa was beginning to suspect was actual relish. "You get shot. The armor's designed to take the hit so you don't have to. Mostly. A young Krill private near the back, not death." One of the newer recruits made a sound that in Krill body language translated roughly to "Sacred Ancestors, please intervene." Vance patted the shoulder plate of a suit hanging on its rack, the motion almost fond. "This thing'll stop most rounds you'll see on a modern battlefield. Slug, laser scatter, low-yield plasma. The weave dissipates it. The plate cracks and eats the rest. It won't stop everything. It won't stop nothing hitting you. But it'll keep you breathing." During the Vesarine incursion, Okafor added, more seriously now, "the enemy's opening move was an electromagnetic pulse designed to fry every powered shield and weapon system in a 20-click radius. Every allied unit with shield tech went down hard. Couldn't project a field. Couldn't fire their charged weapons. We didn't have shield tech to fry. We just kept walking. Kept shooting. Held the line long enough for everyone else to reboot. The silence that followed had a different quality. Now, not confusion, but something closer to dawning, uncomfortable respect. It's why the Alliance keeps folding humans into the frontline slots, Vance said. Not because we're tougher. Because we're simpler. Can't break what isn't there. Duff's mandibles clicked twice, slow. "That is either the most foolish design philosophy I have ever encountered," he said, "or the most cunning." "Bit of both, buddy," Okafor said, grinning. "Suit up. You're all about to find out which." The obstacle course ate them alive. It wasn't the walls, though the walls were bad enough. Concrete barriers, slick with morning dew, that had to be vaulted, hauled over, dragged across by whoever species had the upper body strength to manage it. It wasn't even the crawl tunnels, though Pell nearly had a full nervous collapse halfway through one, insisting in a high, thin voice that it could feel the ceiling lowering. It was definitely lowering. It was the armor. The suits had no shield, but they had weight, real, physical, unglamorous weight, distributed across shoulders and hips and thighs in a way that no species present had trained their body for. The humans moved through it like it was nothing, like the 80 pounds of plate and padding was an afterthought bolted to their frame. Kessa watched a human private, couldn't have been older than 20, in whatever the local reckoning was, vault a wall one-handed, land, roll, and come up running without so much as a change in breathing pattern. "How?" Kessa gasped. watching from the mud where she'd face-planted after her second wall attempt. Do they do that? Gravity, Duth said, offering a clawed hand to haul her up. This planet's gravity is higher than most Alliance homeworlds. They are simply always this strong. It costs them nothing. It's costing me everything, Kessa said, and let herself be hauled. Even Duth, for all his chitin-plated bulk, was breathing hard by the crawled tunnels. Krill were built for short, explosive bursts of combat, not sustained grinding endurance, and the course was very clearly designed to punish exactly the kind of body that wasn't built to just keep going. Pell finished dead last, out of breath, fur matted with mud, and immediately declared to anyone who would listen that it had technically completed the course by creatively reinterpreting the crawl tunnel requirement as walking around it. Nobody had the energy to argue. They collapsed at the final rally point in a heap of aching alien bodies, and it was there, chest heaving, limbs trembling, that Kessa first noticed the range at the far end of the yard. 10 humans stood along the firing line. Every one of them held a weapon. "Oh, no," Pell said, following her gaze. "Oh, no, I don't like that. Duth, I don't like that." "I do not think," Duth said slowly, "that liking it was ever the point." Before they were marched to the yellow line, a fourth figure joined Vance and Okafor at the head of the yard. An older woman, silver-haired, moving with the unhurried economy of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Her uniform bore more patches than Kessa could count, and where her left knee should have been, there was instead a matte, faintly whirring prosthetic, etched along the shin with what looked almost like decorative scrollwork. "This is Master Sergeant Delgado," Okafor said. "She runs the live fire portion. Listen to her. Do exactly what she says. She has done this more times than anyone alive, and she has the least patience for recruits who freeze." Delgado didn't smile. She looked over the assembled squad the way Kessa imagined a butcher looked over livestock, not unkindly, exactly, but with total professional detachment. "Every one of you is about to learn something your instructors can't teach you with words," Delgado said. Her voice was low, even, unhurried. "You can be told 100 times that the armor holds. You won't believe it until it happens to you. That's not a flaw in you. That's just how animals work. Fear doesn't listen to briefings." She let that sit a moment. "When you get up, and you will get up, you'll know something none of your homeworld soldiers know. You'll know what it costs to keep walking after you've already been hit. Most species never learn that lesson until it's real and a real war, when it's too late to practice. You're learning it now in the mud where it's cheap." The Etrian recruit near the front, feathers still damp from the obstacle course, raised a trembling, clawed hand. "Has anyone ever refused?" "Plenty," Delgado said. "Nobody's ever been made to. But the ones who refuse don't graduate. Can't hold a line if you don't know your own limits, and you can't know your limits until something's actually tested them." She tapped the whirring knee once, absently, as if checking a watch. "I refused myself my first time through this exact yard. Made me sit and watch everyone else go first. By the end of the day, I asked to go anyway. Nobody remembers that I hesitated. Everyone remembers I got back up." Kessa found she was staring at the prosthetic despite herself. "Vezarine incursion?" she asked quietly. "Something smaller, further out," Delgado said. "Not every scar is a good story. Some are just Tuesdays." She turned toward the range without further comment. And that, apparently, was the end of the conversation. O'Caffer's voice rang out across the yard, amplified, and utterly without mercy. "Listen up. Every recruit who graduates this course gets shot before they leave today. That's not a punishment, it's tradition. You're going to take a hit from the line, and you're going to walk away from it, and you're going to know in your bones that the armor works. First up, recruit Kessa." "Me?" Kessa's voice came out an octave higher than intended. "Why me first?" "Because you asked the smartest question in the armory this morning," Okafor said. "You earned it. That does not feel like a reward. Get to the yellow line, recruit." Kessa's legs carried her forward on some instinct entirely separate from her conscious will, every part of her screaming that this was an extremely bad idea, that no sane species voluntarily stood in front of loaded weapons without so much as a shield generator between them and oblivion. She reached the yellow line. A young marksman down the range gave her a small, almost apologetic nod. On my mark, Okafor called 3, 2, 1. The impact hit before the sound did. It was not pain. At first, it was force, a solid physical shove that knocked the air clean out of her lungs and sent her stumbling back a full step, arms pinwheeling for balance she didn't have. Then the pain arrived, a half-second late, looming hot and enormous across her chest, and she went down hard onto one knee with a sound halfway between a gasp and a shriek. For 3 full seconds, Kessa was entirely certain she was going to die. Then her vision cleared, and she looked down, and the chest plate, cracked, scorched, a chunk of matte olive material simply gone, had held. Underneath it, her ribs ached ferociously, but there was no blood, no hole, no death. A redoubt blinked to life at the edge of her helmet display. Impact absorbed. Survivability, 96%. "Oh," Kessa said in a very small voice. "Congratulations," Okafor called cheerfully. "You've been shot. Welcome to the club. Get up, we've got 9 more rounds for you before you're done." Kessa did not, in fact, get up gracefully, but she got up. By the time the entire squad had cycled through the range, the yard was a chorus of alien groans, muttered curses in 6 different languages, and, improbably, laughter. Real unguarded laughter, the kind that came from bodies discovering all at once that they had survived something they'd been certain would kill them. Medics moved between the recruits with quick efficiency, checking readouts, administering the mild combat stimulant that dulled the worst of the ache and left most of the squad giddily, uselessly cheerful in its wake. Kessa found herself sitting in the mud beside Duth, both of them wrapped in the loose, floaty calm of the drug, watching Pell attempt to explain to a very patient medic that its tail hurt on a spiritual level. "I thought I would hate this planet," Kessa said, staring up at Earth's pale morning sky, feeling the ache in her chest settle into something almost pleasant under the haze of the stimulant. "I still might, but I understand it a little better now." "They build nothing to fail," Duth said, mandibles clicking slow and thoughtful. "No shield to lose, no field to disrupt. Only the body and the plate, and the will to keep moving after both have been struck. It is a strange kind of strength. But it is strength." "It's insane," Kessa said. "It's completely insane." "Yes," Duth agreed. "Both things can be true." Sergeant Okafor wandered past with a fresh mug of something steaming, surveying the wreckage of alien recruits scattered across the mud with open, genuine fondness. "First one's always the hardest," she said. "You'll get shot again before this is over. Probably a lot. But you'll walk away every time. That's the whole point. When the shields go down and the fields collapse and the fancy tech quits on you, you'll already know what it feels like to keep standing anyway. Pell lifted its head from the mud just long enough to say, with enormous dignity, I would still prefer the shield. Everybody does, kid, Okafor said, laughing. That's why it's called confidence training. Not fun training? The transport trucks rolled in an hour later, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, the squad piled aboard without complaint. Sore, scorched faintly high on medical stimulant, and against every reasonable expectation, still alive. Kessa leaned her aching head against the truck's rattling frame as it lurched into motion, watching the training yard shrink behind them, and found, somewhere beneath the pain, something that felt unmistakably like pride. She had been shot. She had not died. She had gotten back up. Whatever this planet was building in her, one bruise at a time, she thought she might actually come to need it. That evening, the squad was granted a short pass into the base's mess hall, a wide, low building that smelled of grease and coffee, and something the humans called meatloaf, which Pell regarded with deep suspicion, and Duff ate 3 servings of without comment. Bruises had settled into the deep, colorful blooms that marked most species' healing process, and half the recruits still moved with the stiff, careful gait of the recently shot. But the mood in the hall was lighter than Kessa had felt since arriving on the planet. She found a table near the window with Duff and Pell, and was surprised when Delgado herself dropped into the seat across from them, tray in hand, prosthetic knee whirring softly as she sat. You did fine today, Delgado said without preamble, addressing all 3 of them at once. I made a noise like a broken door, Kessa said. Everybody does first time. Delgado picked up her fork. The ones who worry me are the ones who don't make any noise at all. Means they've already decided to stop feeling things, and that's a worse problem than fear. Pell, still faintly trembling from either the stimulant or the memory of the range, poked at its food. Sergeant, may I ask something impolite? You may ask. I reserve the right to find it impolite. Why do humans build it this way? No shield, no field, nothing clever. Just plate and the willingness to be hit. Every species I have ever served beside builds around not being hit at all. Humans built around surviving it instead. It seems like giving up before the fight starts. Delgado considered the question with the same unhurried patience she'd given everything else that day. I don't think it's giving up, she said finally. I think somewhere a long way back, somebody figured out that anything you build to stop every hit eventually meets something that gets through anyway. Shields fail, fields collapse. Power runs out at the worst possible second. But a body that already knows how to keep moving after it's been hurt doesn't run out of anything except itself. It's not that we don't want the shield. Believe me, kid, we'd take the shield. We just decided a long time ago not to build our whole plan around one always working. That is either very wise, Duff said, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, or very sad. Both things can be true, Delgado said, echoing, without knowing it, the exact words Duff had offered Kessa in the mud that morning. She stood, tray in hand, prosthetic whirring. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's easier. Probably. Probably, Pell repeated darkly, watching her go. I have learned to hate that word. Later, lying in the unfamiliar gravity of her bunk with her ribs still aching under a fresh dressing, Kessa found she couldn't sleep, not from pain exactly, but from the strange, restless energy of a mind turning something over and over. She thought about the shield generator she'd grown up believing every soldier needed. She thought about the redoubt blinking calmly in her helmet after the impact that should have killed her, 96% survivability, and the strange, almost embarrassing gratitude she'd felt reading it. She thought about Delgado's knee, whirring softly under the mess hall table, worn like a badge rather than hidden like a wound. Across the dark barracks she could hear Duff's slow, powered-down breathing, and somewhere near the far wall, Pell muttering in its sleep about meatloaf in a tone of genuine betrayal. She thought, before sleep finally took her, that she understood now why the Alliance kept building its front line around these strange, low-tech, stubbornly unshielded people. Not because they were fearless. She had heard every recruit on that range make some sound of terror before the shot landed, human privates included, hidden politely under their helmets. Not because they were invincible. She had the cracked, scorched chest plate stowed under her bunk to prove otherwise. It was because when everything clever eventually failed, and eventually she now believed everything clever always did, humans had already spent generations learning exactly how to keep standing anyway. She closed her eyes, felt the dull, honest ache in her ribs, and for the first time since landing on this loud, muddy, gravity-heavy planet, she slept without dreaming of home. Morning came as it always did on Earth, far too early and announced by the ringing clang of a pipe against a metal railing. Kessa was on her feet before the third strike, and if her body still ached, it ached less than the day before, a small, stubborn proof that Delgado had been right about at least one thing. Tomorrow would, in fact, be easier, probably.